Just a few years ago, people said no team would ever win 73 games. People said no one would ever average a triple-double for a season. People said no one could possibly have more than 366 turnovers in a year. Well, as you know, all of those people turned out to be wrong. In just the last 2 seasons, all 3 of those things have happened. Because if there's one constant in sports, it's that things change, players evolve, and records are broken. Now, with that said, I'm just gonna get this out of the way right now. There are plenty of NBA records that might never be broken unless things drastically change. No one's probably going to average over 50 points in a season anytime soon. As for a lot of these other unbreakable records, such as most assists in a game, longest win streak, or even scoring 100 points in a single basketball game, well, I think it's possible that those records will be broken. So here are 4 unbreakable records that will be topped. Number 4, assists in a game. Now, in order to come up with unbreakable records I think will be broken, I first had to look at what records people thought were unbreakable. And one that was on pretty much everyone's list was the most assists in a single basketball game. A record that was set by Scott Skiles when he was playing for the Orlando Magic in a game against the Denver Nuggets. Now, I do have to say at first glance, this record does seem pretty amazing. As in a December matchup in 1990, Scott Skiles racked up an otherworldly 30 assists in a single game, despite the fact that he was a very average NBA player. Now, that might seem harsh, but it's true. The 1991 season was Skiles' best season of his career, and he was still not even an all-star and only averaged 8.4 assists a night, a number that ranked him 10th in assists per game that season. Meanwhile, John Stockton averaged 14.4 assists per game that year, and he could only come up with a season high of 28 assists in a game. So how did Scott Skiles finish with 30 assists? Well, looking back at that night, many have called Skiles' performance the perfect storm. For one thing, the team he was playing, the eventual 20-62 Denver Nuggets, were coached by Paul Westphal, the resident Mike D'Antoni of his era. Westphal's teams played an extreme run-and-gun style, and the Nuggets that year would average 120 points per game and gave up an average of 130 points per game. So the fact that the Denver players were basically trained to not play defense was certainly a factor here. The other thing Skiles had going for him was that the Magic just had one of those games where everything went in. They would end up scoring an absurd 155 points and shot 57% from the field. 2 numbers that are almost as ridiculous as Skiles' 30 assists. And just looking at this record-breaking 30 number, at first glance, it seems very breakable, especially because there are several guys with 28 assists, 27 assists. It's not like 30 assists is standing alone on some island here. But then you see that the most assists in the 2000s is 24, and maybe you start to question things a little, but I still think this record will eventually be broken. For one thing, while 30 is a big number, it's actually not as big as it could have been, because during this game, Scott Skiles had no idea that he was even near the record for assists in a game. In fact, he finished the game with more than 20 points because he was just playing the game naturally and wasn't chasing any type of record. Which means that nowadays, if a player were to rack up a ton of assists early and were to chase the record, well, I think it wouldn't be as hard as you would think to break. In this modern NBA where guys are putting up crazy stats almost every single night, 31 assists in one game doesn't sound too far-fetched. I mean, just this season alone, Ricky Rubio had 10 assists in a single quarter. And if we're looking at the guy who was probably the #1 candidate to break 30 assists in a single game, well, we just have to go back a few months to find that on New Year's Eve, James Harden dropped an absurd 53 points and 17 assists on the New York Knicks. I mean, Harden scored 53 points and had 17 assists. If he was only looking to pass that night, just take that kind of usage rate and then convert most of the made baskets to assists. 31 assists is very possible. Number 3, longest win streak. I'm going to be honest here, the Los Angeles Lakers win streak is more than a little intimidating. In the 1972 season, in the span of 65 days, the Lakers did not lose a single game. This incredible run saw them rack up 33 straight wins while outscoring their opponents by 17 points a game. Led by Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, and Gail Goodrich, the 72 Lakers would finish the season with a 69-13 record and would go on to beat the Knicks in the NBA NBA Finals. These Lakers put together one of the best seasons in NBA history, and up until very recently, I could see why people thought this streak would never be matched. As until 2007, the second largest win streak in NBA history was only 20 games by the Washington Capitals in the 1940s. But then the Rockets won 22 straight in 2008, and then the Heat won 27 straight in 2013, and then the Warriors won 28 straight in the 2015 and 2016 seasons. And yes, a win streak between 2 consecutive seasons is allowed by the official record. I'm not really sure if I agree with that, but that's another story for another day. Regardless of that, the theme here is that until very recently, it did seem that this 33-game win streak would never be touched. But now, well, already in the last 5 years, 2 teams have approached the record and had a real shot to break it. In fact, after the Warriors lost to the Bucks and ended their streak, they won their next 5 games in a row, which means if they had won that Bucks game, they would have won 34 total games in a row, breaking the record. As for the Heat, well, they lost to the Bulls by 4 points to end their streak, won 2 games in a row, lost to the Knicks, then finished out the year by winning 8 more games in a row. So if they had just won those 2 games against the Bulls and the Knicks, they would have finished with a 39-game win streak to end the season. And yeah, both teams could have won games that would have broken the win streak, but they didn't. I get that. The point remains here that these 2 teams were already very close to breaking this record. So to say 33 straight wins is unbreakable would just be kind of ridiculous at this point, especially because as we've seen recently, many teams have finally realized that the best way to build a team is through the draft, which means that the best way to build a team is to tank, which means that the teams at the top end up with an inflated amount of wins. That's why recently we've seen the Warriors win 73 games while the Spurs also won 67 games in that same season. That's why we've also seen 6 of the 10 largest win streaks in NBA history come in the last 9 years. And when you account for the fact that the NBA seems very open to expansion teams, which would dilute the talent level and give teams at the top even more easy wins, well, I don't see why a dominant team can't catch fire in an easy part of their schedule and win 34 games. Number 2, free throw percentage in a season. We don't really have to go too in depth for this one. The current record holder for free throw percentage in a season is Jose Calderon with a pretty outrageous .981 free throw percentage. As in 2009, Calderon took 154 free throws and made 151 of them. Now, in order to qualify for the free throw percentage leaderboard, a player only needs to make 125 free throws in a season, which is less than 2 a game. This means that I don't expect someone like Curry or Harden or someone who shoots a ton of free throws in a season to ever break this record. The reason is that those guys just play too many minutes, they just take too many tired free throws. It just seems really unlikely that an NBA star would only miss 2% of his free throws all year. With that said though, if a player is only taking around 130 to 150 free throws in a season, then shooting over 98% from the line is doable. It's really just a matter of one guy having a statistical anomaly of a season from the free throw line. Because as most people who have researched this agree, it takes about 750 shooting attempts for a player's true shooting percentage to show. So if you take someone like Jose Calderon, an 88% career free throw shooter, and only look at his numbers for 1 year, he might shoot 98% from the free throw line 1 year like he did in 2009, and he also might just shoot 80% from the free throw line like he did 1 year later in 2010. So until someone shoots 100% from the free throw line in a single season, I'm always going to think the free throw record could be broken. It just comes down to a guy taking a limited amount of free throw attempts and having a statistical anomaly of a season from the foul line, which is pretty boring, yes, but I think it's a reasonable explanation of why this record can be broken. And number 1, most points scored in a game. So here we are, the 100-point game, a number that seems so outlandish that you might be convinced it's actually unbreakable, especially when you consider the era that Wilt was playing. Because in 1962, teams averaged a ridiculous 108 field goal attempts a game. Compare this to 2017, where teams only average 85 shots a game, and you can see that we have a problem. Teams might just not shoot the ball enough in today's era to accomplish a 100-point game for a single player. I mean, just looking at Wilt's stats for his 100-point game, he took 63 shots from the field. To put that number into perspective, since 1984, the most field goal attempts by one player in one game is only 50. So it's clear here that the whole 63 field goal attempts in a game is a problem. If a player actually needs to take that many shots, then a 101-point outburst from a modern star might actually just be impossible. But I have to remind you that the players in this great era have a very distinct advantage of the players in Wilt's era. That is, of course, the three-point line. The three-point shot is the great equalizer when it comes to the 100-point game. In Wilt's era, the three-point line did not exist, so there were no three-pointers attempted per season. When Kobe dropped 81, the average team put up 16 threes a game, which meant about 20% of their shots were three-pointers. But now, in 2017, teams are averaging 27 three-pointers a game out of 85 shots, which means that about 30% of shots taken by teams in the modern NBA are three-pointers, which is a huge difference. And if this trend continues, well, is it so difficult to imagine a future star catching fire from the three-point line and making a real run at this 100-point record? I don't think it's that crazy, and the thing is, just like Scott Skiles' 30 assists, it's clear that Wilt left something on the table for his 100-point game. I mean, the man only shot 57% from the field, which is a great number for a normal game or a season, but in an all-time record-breaking 100-point game, I think it's definitely possible that someone is so on fire that they shoot 65 or 70% from the field. You have to remember that I'm not saying this is going to happen this season or next season or even in the next 10, 20 years. I'm saying that sometime in basketball history, this number could be broken. I don't think it's that difficult to see the stars aligning and some guy knocking down 15 threes in a game and making 20 free throws. And just looking at this stat line, if that player were also to shoot 65% from the field, well, suddenly this 101-point game falls into place. Now, I just want to remind you guys that I don't think this is really going to happen anytime soon. I mean, maybe it will, who knows, but 101 points in a basketball game is just absurd. Devin Booker just set the NBA on fire and he only had 70. But that's what I want you to take out of this video. At the end of the day, it's really hard to say that something will never happen again. We don't know how the sport's gonna evolve. We don't know what changes are going to happen in the future. I mean, for all we know, in 10, 20 years, teams could be taking 40% of their shots from three, and the average amount of possessions in games could dramatically increase. Or maybe things go the opposite way. Who really knows? What I do know, though, is that all it takes is one crazy game, one perfect storm, and suddenly records we never thought would be broken are shattered. Because at the end of the day, records are meant to be broken. That's why we love sports. We love to watch athletes do things we didn't think were possible. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you're new to the channel, I hope you subscribe. Make basketball videos like this, do NBA what ifs, do NBA conspiracies, do a whole bunch here. If you love basketball, I think you'll love my content and I'd love to have you. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much for supporting. You're awesome. We know this, we've been over it, but you know, I'll tell you every time just to inflate your ego. You deserve it. And as always, have an awesome day and cue the music.